sequence of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Imagine hundreds of people crowding city streets, shouting, breaking windows, and burning properties to the ground. These people are angry because their political system has let them down once again. They've taken to the streets to riot, to demonstrate their frustrations and show their politicians how upset they really are. Since the beginning of our great nation, Americans have been granted the liberty to express their political opinion in countless ways, including running for office and voting. However, one of the most historically common ways for people to voice their political opinions in any country is rioting. While most countries have given their citizens the right to protest peacefully, history seems to point to violent protests being the most effective means in prompting progress. While you may have initially imagined the people crowding the streets to riot as young people today, this protest could have occurred at any time or place. In fact, without protests like these, our country may not exist as we know it today. America was founded on the freedom to express frustration with political systems. A favorite example of history teachers is the Boston Tea Party. Heather Cox Richardson, an American history professor at Boston College, said in a 2015 paper about the history of American riots, the Boston Tea Partiers insisted that they were being taxed unfairly by the British Parliament to the benefit of the wealthy, to which the rioters responded by dumping tea overboard into the Boston Harbor. Richard goes on to say they destroyed about 90,000 pounds of tea, or about $1.7 million worth of property today. Boston Tea Party is often treated as an American revolutionary act, but what most of us don't learn in school is that this was more than a protest. It was a violent, illegal riot. Sam Adams and the Sons of Liberty were known to incite riots as well. This cousin of John Adams was a revolutionary leader of the group Sons of Liberty who would riot against the Crown's unfair colonial laws and taxation. A.J. Langeth, USC history professor, wrote in his 1986 history book, Patriots, the Men Who Started the American Revolution, Adams controlled riots with precision and aimed actions only at royal officials, politicians, or tax collectors. The mobs burned royalists in effigy, stoned their houses, and tarred and feathered customs collectors. Riots that occurred in the years leading to the American Revolution were cited by both Langeth and Richardson as reasons that patriots provoked and eventually won the American Revolution. Clearly, without these riots, Americans would have never been able to gain independence. Some of the next best known riots occurred to grant Americans a different type of liberty: civil rights. Civil rights era protests is often marked as the turning point in American protests, with Martin Luther King notably influencing resistors to use nonviolent protest. However, nonviolent philosophy did not stop violence. Alden Morris, a sociology professor at Northwest University, writes in 1986 that during student protests in Birmingham in May 1963, violence broke out between some of the members of the Black community and police during these protests against segregation. Dogs were sicked on students. Fire hoses were used to keep crowds at bay, and many students were injured and arrested. When President Kennedy got wind of the behavior of the police, Morris states that the president immediately sent Justice Department officials to negotiate the rights of Black students in Birmingham with government officials. This was the beginning of the negotiations that led up to the Civil Rights Act and integration. This is an example of when rioting, even when provoked by police, can bring enough attention that it results in positive outcomes. As my speech comes to a close, I urge you to think of the riots and protests today. and what people are protesting against, and why these things matter in the context of history. More recently, from Rodney King to Freddie Gray, riots have become a matter of life and death for marginalized communities. The origin of our country has roots in riots, and the civil rights movement was successful because of the horrible violence that citizens and politicians saw African Americans face by police and Southern politicians. From the beginning of this country until now, as long as democracy exists, riots will be as American as apple pie.
Bravo.
Okay.